Hello. This is my assignment about the conversation with my friend about some of the cultural difference we had, and this is my friend Chris. Is American, U.S. born American, and yeah. So let's just go through some of the questions. Well, so yeah, like last year you also went to China, so you have some a little bit not deep understanding, but I mean some understanding about the Chinese culture. What do you think? Is there something that's fascinating that you feel totally different compared to the U.S. culture?
Something fascinating, huh?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of culture, probably the language.
Language?
Very, very different language and very different writing syntax.
Mm-hmm.
So like pretty complicated to what we're used to speaking. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's a part of cultural difference because
that and probably all the history. Like in America, we don't have a whole lot of history, and our culture itself is a combination of 30 different cultures, where your culture is very, very historical and very, very, it's like linear, where you don't have basically no culture. America basically doesn't have a culture.
Well, but I mean English is come from. Was born from Latins, right?
It's an amalgamation of like a bunch of different languages. So like Anglo-Saxon and German and Latin and French. It's basically just a mismatch of a bunch of languages. How they kind of developed into what it is now.
I think. Yeah, one difference is like for English, you guys, you created this word and you expand it. But for Chinese, we just when we see a mountain, mountain, how to write the mountain. It's just like looks like a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, we just kind of like when people are at a Stone Age, they do those canvas things. It's basically we evolve. That's our language evolution. We basically just change the canvas into written language and speaking language. Yeah. And and I would like to ask you some question about this cultural difference. So, how would you identify happiness and wealthy of life?
How do we identify happiness and wealth of life? Happiness is probably just having friends and family and a job and things that you enjoy to do, and kind of less stress, I would say. Basically having a lot of different experiences in life, and probably having other people like you, your family like you, being respectful to them, stuff like that.
So, in my opinion, I think you're saying like as long as myself is happy and I got experience all of this stuff, I will be happy, right? Even though sometimes maybe other people won't like you that much, as long as you're happy, that's just happiness, right?
Yeah. For me, as long as I'm happy with myself, then that's happy.
Yeah.
I can't really, some people aren't gonna like me, but I don't really care.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another difference for Chinese people because in Chinese people, we learned from Confucianism, which talks about harmony with families and people around us. So even though sometimes ourselves, my individual might not be happy as long as my family members, my significant others are happy. I feel that's my happiness, and yeah, that's just a total different culture.
Yeah, there's some people who may judge some of their happiness on that, but for me,
Yeah, and
happiness comes from internal force.
yeah, I think that in our textbook they call that collectiveness culture. So yeah, basically your experience is based on the people surrounding you and your environment. Okay, and also one thing I would like to know, how do you think about that? So in China, some parents abandon their children because they were born with a disability. In your perspective, how do you think about that? You think that's moral or?
For me, that's one of the reasons why I probably won't have children unless they have genetic modification. Just because that's a huge burden on the parent, and I personally don't want that. So for me, it's kind of like it's off-putting once they're born, but for me, I would like to have some way to prevent that before they were born.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's certainly not the typical American view. Most Americans would view that as very, very wrong. For me, I'm kind of like, I kind of side with them because it's a huge burden for the rest of their life. So.
True. Yeah, so in China, having a children is basically your first priority because your parents want you to have children so they can see their grandsons and see you living a happy life. You have a family, like I said before, they want you to have a happy family, so you feel the happiness, even though sometimes there's some burdens. But yeah, as long as your family is good, and you should be happy. And actually, some parents abandon their children because of disability, because cultural disability is actually we treat it like a curse. Like maybe it's because you did something wrong, and heaven God need to punish you, so they give your child this disability. So some parents will just, once they find their children have a disability, they will just abandon them because it's a sign of evil, a sign of bad things. Yeah, but
ours.
Oh yeah.
Ours doesn't. I mean, there's some superstition involved with some more religious people, but I would say it's less more about like bad luck and stuff. It's more like God gave this trial to me or whatever.
Yeah. So just basically just two different views. Some people see it as a challenge, and some people see it as a burden. Yeah, and also one thing I'm really curious, because I learned this from my textbook, is do you think when you have a relationship with someone, you need your parents or family members to give you approval?
That's typically what happens, yeah. I mean, usually you'll bring like significant other over, and then they'll weigh in and say, I don't like that person, and then if they don't like that person, usually that's pretty much the end of the relationship, going to like the next level or whatever.
Yeah, so your view is pretty close to the East Asian cultural views, because like I said, family is a big part of our life, right? So we have to find significant others that suits our parents' lifestyle, our parents' view. Even though maybe you don't really like that significant others, that's why a lot of a lot of parents when their children is like 25, 26 years old and they're not married, they will just go out and ask people to date with their daughter, date with their son, just to try it because they really want them to have
I saw that
grandson.
on Netflix where they have like your mom goes and has a sign and says, "Please take my son,
Yeah.
take my daughter." Yeah, ours is more like, like you usually want your family's approval, but like they're not going to be choosing. It's just going to be like, okay, you don't like him, and then they'll convince you that you don't like them, and then you'll find somebody else that you like.
Yeah, actually, a few days ago, I just saw this news. Like, there's a 40 years old Asian mom was on a hunt by the police because she is trying to introduce her son to some of the American girls in the college, and they think that's just really suspicious. So they put her on a hunt, and there's a manhunt on their contents. That's just so ridiculous.
That's weird.
Yeah. And okay, let's move on to the next topic. So, do you think religion is an important part of your life?
Not an important part of my life, but an important part of at least half of Americans' life.
The main religious, the domestic religion is Christian, right?
Most people at least have some sort of Christian views.
And the Bible shaped their views about the world and their views about the family, right?
Yeah, they kind of take that for it depends on the region and everything and the individual, but we generally take the Bible as like, concrete or whatever.
Yeah, so pretty different in China. So right now, there's a gap between the old generation and our generation because old generation they are pretty conservative, so they still trust about religions. Some Buddhism, Taoism, they still believe about that. But for the young generation, there's a disconnect between religious and us because our government promote scientific ways to prove things instead of religious. And I kind of forgot what is that word. So you don't believe there's any God exists? What's the word for that?
Atheist.
Yeah, atheist. Yeah, so our government promote atheist, and in our class we never talk about anything about religion, and our parents don't. Usually they don't tell us about religion, so there's a really big disconnect between us and the old generation. And I think
ours is. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I think religious is less important in our society, in our culture right now. We're more focusing on the scientific side and technology side. And
ours is slowly drifting towards that way as well. But it's less about the government and more about the internet.
Yeah. So do you think that's a good thing or bad thing? Do you think we still need religious to shape our culture, our identity?
I don't. I think it's something which causes more evil than it does good.
Because there's some fanatics, right?
Yeah, it doesn't allow you to choose and weigh the evidence. You say, well, this is this right here. Whereas if you take the evidence, it doesn't necessarily lead you in that direction.
Right. And Also, oh yeah, one last question. What do you think about the LGBT culture?
In terms of like what?
So, just in your view, do you think they are? Do you think LGBT is something that's natural, or that's justified?
It's just something that is biological. It's just how your hormones and your genes are
Mm-hmm.
formulated in the womb and conception.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just something like if someone has blue eyes, or they have, diabetes or
Mm-hmm.
some other disease
Mm-hmm.
or some other genetic related condition, then it's just the same
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, another big debate in China is about the LGBT culture. Still, there's a gap between old generation and the young generation. So the old generation thinks LGBT is not correct, just like the conservative Christians. They think it's evil because just like the nature in their view, the nature should be a male should be interested into female, not another male, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but in our young generation, as the internet opens up and we have access to this LGBT rights movement and how they feel about themselves, how they feel about the society, and all the harsh things they go through. And actually, right now, young generation is pretty open to the LGBT group. Even though our government acknowledge LGBT, but they don't approve same sexuality marriage, gay marriage. So it's just pretty weird. They're trying to be conservative, and they're also trying to open to the new things. I think that's just an interesting thing about our culture.
Yeah, I think our culture is somewhat this, there's older people are kind of against it, but
Mm-hmm.
our culture is more can more rapidly change,
Yeah.
as there's not as much control over the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Internet is I think internet is a big factor to improve
Yeah.
the multiculturalism.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. I think that's all the thing I want to ask. Do you have any questions you want to ask me or any clarification?
No, I
No?
think that was great.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris.
All right.
All right.
Thanks.
Then. Thank you.